most people in recovery will tell you that their problems started long before they took their first drink or drug. And that's really a critical piece of the puzzle to understand what led you into addiction, because it's also the solution to escape it.
Welcome to the FocalFlip podcast. Every week we take a deep dive into the mystery and stigma behind mental health and explore real-life stories of struggle and triumph. We aim to educate and encourage others as we bring together a diverse group of guests. From the streets to sanctuaries, classrooms to boardrooms, mental health does not discriminate, neither do we. Prepare to laugh, prepare to cry, prepare to be changed. Let's get into it. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the FocalFlip podcast, or I can say welcome to the FocalFlip podcast. We're still trying to figure out which is really going to be our first or second episode. Today, awesome friend. Told you all about him in the intro. This is Big John. I call him Big John. John McNeely. How are you doing, buddy?
Very good. Thanks.
Good. Thanks for coming out today, man.
My pleasure.
So, everybody who's listening and watching this one now, John and I, we're not polished podcast hosts, nor are we often interviewed or anything like that on camera. And I think you guys are going to see that in some of our content. John's much, much better than me. But we're looking forward to bringing everybody alongside this journey. Today, John, the reason why I wanted you on here was kind of to talk a little bit about yourself, because one of the things a lot of folks don't know about with my journey was alcoholism. Mm-hmm. There was some addiction in there, a lot of different stories. So you have had a very unique story and a very, very interesting transformation when it comes from a mental perspective. Yep. And that's why we really wanted to have you on here. So first, John, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me how you and I first came to know each other. And
well, I mean,
all that good stuff.
You and I met in the rooms of recovery, and when we talk about alcoholism, and addiction, most professionals and people in recovery will tell you that alcoholism is a symptom of a much deeper problem. So when you ask me to tell you about myself, I really need to go into the depths of the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So for me, in early childhood, I was full of fear and insecurity, just uncomfortable in my own skin. I couldn't connect with people. There was always something missing, and those in recovery will tell you it's a spiritual malady. And to simplify what that means is the problem goes down deep into your soul.
Okay.
For me, I was always left unsatisfied, always seeking something I couldn't put my finger on. I had no joy in my life, so I was always seeking pleasure.
Oh, was there anything that you liked to do?
Well, early childhood up until about the age of 5 was wondrous. But after that, it became a slow descent into hell. I had no joy inside of me, so I was always seeking pleasure. I had no happiness inside of me, so I was always seeking excitement. I had no peace inside me, so I was seeking satisfaction, endlessly seeking. Most people in recovery will tell you that their problems started long before they took their first drink or drug. And that's really a critical piece of the puzzle to understand what led you into addiction, because it's also the solution to escape it. Understanding the root causes that led you on the path of alcoholism and addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about what that process was like when you're young, you're confused. When you have that confusion, what is that process like? Clearly I know your story and what you ended up choosing to do, right? But can you just kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Well, it was constant mental chaos. It was living in a mind that just wouldn't be silent. I was constantly worrying about what people thought of me, obsessively self-conscious, worried about what I said, what I should have said differently. It was as if I was a step behind everyone else. I just couldn't mesh. I couldn't fit in. I couldn't make connections with people. I was always just obsessively thinking about myself. And as I grew older, I would become angry because I perceived the world as happening to me personally. Everything was an aggravation.
Oh, wow.
So
you were defensive.
Absolutely.
Just extremely defensive.
And then there's childhood trauma, that has its part in it. A lot of things that during childhood development create how we think and how we react, what our attitudes, outlooks, and perspectives are. And for me, those developed in a way that I basically manufactured my own misery, but couldn't see it because I was constantly blaming everything around me as the cause. And it just progressively got worse and worse and worse. And when you drink or do drugs, not only does it change your mood, but it actually fills that gap inside of you. So, for example, if you're full of fear and insecurity, that's why they call it liquid courage.
Oh, yeah. I'm familiar with that.
Or personality in a bottle for those who can't interact with people, So, alcoholism and addiction is pretty simple. Use leads to abuse, leads to addiction. But it's the underlying cause. Being that it's just a symptom of a much deeper problem, that's why it's so hard to treat.
Wow. Yeah, I know. It's such an interesting journey with alcohol in general. Because I look back at my story, and what did you just say about something abuse? What was that little thing you said? Use, abuse?
Oh, alcoholism, the process is really pretty simple. Use leads to abuse, leads to addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that shocks me so much was like I could socially drink, like no problem, all of that until I too was manufacturing my own misery, which people will find out through the shows. And I didn't know what to do with that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I never realized that I eventually would just become addicted to this thing.
Sure.
I never knew. And everybody's going to learn this too, because I never knew it was a progressive illness.
Yeah.
I never had heard of the phenomena of craving. Mm-hmm. I never really understood the impact of obsession, compulsion, all that stuff. So I think that's super unique when you say it's a much deeper problem.
Much deeper.
And it is.
And again, that's why it's so difficult to treat, because when you go into treatment programs and those types of things to stop the substance abuse, you're left with all these underlying problems that you've been drowning out with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming. And for most people, relapsing back to the only solution they know is inevitable.
Yeah. So tell me about your journey with into the alcoholism and addiction. I know some of your story has some addiction in there and some opiates and stuff. So can you take me into that a little bit, where it went to use, abuse, and addiction? Tell me what that looked like for your journey.
For me personally, I started drinking when I was 12, and from the very first time I drank alcoholically. It just an endless thirst that could not be quenched. It just and every time I drank, it was in excess. And this went on for quite a while. Through my early teens and through high school. But as life progressed and my tolerance increased, I was able, to not drink during the week and just drink on weekends, believing I was doing so socially. But in reality, once I started drinking, I couldn't stop, And since I had such a high tolerance for abusing alcohol, I had the tolerance of a rhinoceros. I would feel physically fine, but, intoxicated, blackout intoxicated, and still walking, talking normally. I've had 7 lifetime DUIs.
Wow, really?
Yeah, the
7.
The consequence. Well, they were spread out. Some.
Yeah, but how old were you when you got your first?
I think the first one I was 18. Shortly after I was licensed to drive.
Man, I don't mean to laugh, but we've been in recovery.
Yeah, it's
wow.
And the more I tried to control that aspect of my life, the alcohol abuse, I was reasonably successful and, had a career and did well, but it was almost as if I was two different people. On one hand, I'm responsible and working hard, and the other hand, a dumpster fire.
So you drink alcoholically right from the rip?
Right from the beginning, yeah.
Like, did it taste good right away, or did you just knew what it was going to do to you?
I got intoxicated and loved it. It healed all the...
It can be a great feeling.
Well, it works until it doesn't.
Yeah, we're going to use that for some shorts and some reels. That's a fact.
And as my alcohol progressed and the consequences progressed and the hopelessness and desperation and irritability, restlessness, discontentment, I was prescribed opiates in my late 30s, and that took me to a whole nother level of descent. I was on prescription opiates for 14 years. Ooh. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your moral values are. When you're on opiates that long, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah.
And the easiest way to describe those 14 years is it just sucked my soul completely dry. I started to withdraw from people, places, things, and push those things away and began to isolate within myself and basically just wrapped myself in a cocoon where all that existed in the end was me, myself, my addiction, and my misery. Wow. It took me to a place where I truly believed life wasn't worth living. Ooh. That there was no way out. And to be totally transparent with you, I'm very lucky I survived my own hand during that time.
Mm. So what changed? I met you 3 years ago.
For me,
I'm sorry. I'm just still trying to soak in parts of your story.
Well, this is
powerful and deep that goes.
This is the depths of hell that very few could even begin to imagine.
Sure.
It's relentless self-torture, guilt, shame, and eventually you just surrender to the fact that you're going to die from this disease. There's no way out. It's hopeless desperation, and there is no way out. And luckily for me, I was forced into a way out. I got another DUI driving under the influence of drugs, and being that it was a multiple DUI in 6 years, I was sentenced to a year in jail.
Okay.
Now for me,
some time, huh?
Well, but for me, I'm a middle class, decent guy who's never spent more than a night in jail. So getting a year, that was completely shock and awe. Yeah. I was looking at...
You don't look like it.
Well...
You look kind of scary. He'd been in jail a minute or two.
I'm a steel-coated marshmallow. Don't let looks fool you. But
gentle giant, man.
Yeah, but I was looking at losing my family. I was looking at losing my house. I was looking at losing everything I owned. I was in the process of retiring, and that would have interrupted that, and I would have lost everything. And that's really what pushed me to the edge of contemplating suicide at that point. My life was, in essence, over.
Did you have those thoughts while you were in jail? Or of course those thoughts were growing as it was getting closer towards your white flag.
I was sentenced to a year and then was given 30 days to get my affairs in order. And that's when I came very, very close.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you didn't.
Well, I am too.
Because here we are. You are, and we're literally about to share some serious strength and hope.
One of my favorite quotes is by Marcus Aurelius. He said, "It's not death a man should fear, but rather he should fear never beginning to live." And up until that point, I had not even begun to live.
Wow.
And so what happened from that point on is a journey into awakening into a life that I had never lived.
And that insert me, that's where I met you for the first time. Tell me about this and the start of this transformation for you. When it comes from, we're talking from a mental standpoint, because this is the whole point of destigmatizing this whole beast. Tell me about that turning point mentally.
Well, it's interesting.
When did that happen?
Well, it's interesting. I was given a 90-day jail-based treatment program in lieu of the year. And while I was in that treatment program, probably about 30 days in, they told me that statistics were that 90% of all people that go through any kind of treatment program will fail in the first year. And they said of the 40 people that were in my class, there was only going to be 4 who made it, and several of us will die as a result of relapsing. And I'll be honest, that filled me with dread. I was full of fear. What happens when I'm through this program and I'm alone with the enemy? I knew at that point that I was the enemy. Yeah. Nothing has stopped me. Nothing has been able to stop the progression of this disease. I'm going to lose everything. And I wallowed in fear for about 2 days, and then something flipped. I can't explain it, but something flipped, and that fear turned into defiance. If there's only going to be 4 people who are going to make it, I'm going to be one of them. And after the treatment program, I was court-ordered into a 12-step program. And within a 12-step program, one of the steps is to look deep inside of yourself, and find, your character defects. And this really, for me, is when the change started happening, when I started to look inward. Because I had never looked at myself before. I was too busy blaming all the outside circumstances. Yeah. And when I started looking inside of my, let me back up a little bit. Someone asked me this early in recovery. They said, "Do you ever think about what it is you're thinking about?" And that took me off guard a little bit, because the answer is no. I have never asked, looked and thought about what I was thinking about. I just reacted to what I was thinking about, and I reacted to it badly. Never once did I ask myself, is this thought or feeling, is it reasonable? Is it rational? Is it even true? And as I started to dive into myself, into my disturbances and the things that made me wallow in misery, began to discover, suppressed traumas, delusional beliefs, irrational fears that controlled the way I thought, felt, and behaved my entire life. And that process is truly incredible. And it's also very difficult to face.
I was about to say the next thing on that was, it's so beautiful. Why is it so difficult? It was a difficult process for me in my journey. But once I said, let's go, and embraced it, it eventually has become second nature.
Right.
Why are people are so difficult? Because I truly think in deep down that people know. Inside, you're just like, I just feel like, okay, deep inside, you're like, all right. So, I don't know that, but.
The answer to your question is really a psychological one. That comes from the ego. The ego has defense mechanisms of self-justification. So it's very hard for me to see myself and my faults and my faulty thinking. Because, like we discussed before, the ego is defending itself and blaming everything else as the cause. You have a right to be angry. You have a right to wallow. This is all justified. So until you can actually see past your ego defense mechanisms and start diving into the unconscious fears, traumas, and delusions, that's why it's so hard. And to be honest, most people don't want to face themselves. That's the hardest thing you can do. Friedrich Nietzsche has an excellent quote: "When you stare into the abyss stares back into you."
Yeah, that's a fact.
It's dark.
It's a fact. For some reason, I randomly thought about the "as a man thinketh."
Yeah.
And you're just like, Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So this whole flipped process, I mean, it sounds like you had a psychic change. There's a lot of different things that people put in this. At the beginning of our show, you talked about that spiritual malady. And then I come strolling through the rooms, I was very sick. Yeah. I come strolling through the rooms, and you and I are completely different. Right. Like, you had different belief system based on where I believed, and that was how we were conditioned, and then we kind of made our own decisions from it. But the really, really unique thing about our journey was this whole flipping, this process, right, inward.
Right.
So many people do it and talk about it, and it's counselors, therapists, all this other stuff. One thing that I liked is through the programs that I was doing was that I was getting experience with people that weren't biased.
Right.
There was no judgment, But for me, I wanted to take it a little bit farther, and that's why I asked you to come alongside my journey 3 years ago, I guess, right, something like that. Because we have two completely different mindsets, but the way that we act and live is very similar. So it was just unique. Right. So with me coming in there extremely sick, you really helped kind of teach me a way to look at the things.
Right.
So I'm going to share this with you because I don't know if I have yet or not. Unfortunately, my story involves relapse, and the relapse was bad. When I went back to the behavioral health center, I went in on multiple shots. I literally could not kill myself. Mm-hmm. It was like I would have been okay if I didn't wake up the next morning, but I was too chicken to take my own life.
Sure.
But the thing about that was when I went back and I looked and I became more open-minded, and then I kind of sought you out, we realized that I was not taking this look inward far enough.
Correct.
And I ended up going back out. Mm-hmm. And that's so wild. That's delusional. It's insanity as to how that could happen, But then my second time going in there, I sit down and I start that inward piece that I know we're all going to get to. Mm-hmm. And it was so scary when I first started limping into it.
Right.
And then next thing you know, I've got you, all the support system around me doing, and then it just became this unraveling.
That's funny you say unraveling because that's exactly what it is. It's an unraveling.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful process.
I have done an incredible amount of very, very deep inner work, and without question, my mind's greatest weakness is its own certainty. Certainty of what I think, feel, and believe is true.
Yeah.
So when you say open-mindedness, you have to actually look at yourself and question your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings. And most people struggle with that because you have to go deep inside of yourself and ask yourself questions that, quite frankly, you don't want to ask yourself.
You really don't.
No.
You really don't. But then you start doing it and you're just like, oh, okay, this wasn't so bad.
Right.
This wasn't so bad. I think that, of course, all these programs and spirituality all exist for that reason. And I think it strips us down.
It does. It strips one layer of illusion away after the other.
Yeah, that's what I have found. And I've leaned in onto so many different leaders and different people of intellect. And I'm finding just a lot of really unique parallels. Mm-hmm. And what I'm learning is that these programs, whatever avenue you use to get to it, eventually, once you're honest, open-minded, and willing, and you've waved your white flag and you've hit your desperation moment, that's when you can heal.
Right.
Right? It strips you down completely to the point that you start to grow mentally.
Absolutely.
That's what I've learned.
The clarity that comes with a silent mind is undescribable.
Yeah, totally. That gets us into the next part, life after addiction.
Yeah.
Is it really after addiction? What is it, John? What is this new life that we have? How many years of sobriety you got?
I'm in my 6th year.
Okay. Tell me about this new life that you have. Is there such thing as life after addiction? Or is it just life when we're not in it? Because you could look at it multiple ways. There is like the clinical piece and, but.
The truth is that before sobriety, I had never lived. I didn't know what true happiness was. I didn't know what true inner peace was. I lived in a world that was just constant frustration and seeking and irritability and discontentment and longing for something I couldn't put my finger on. And in sobriety with a radical shift in attitudes, outlooks, and perspectives, with doing the deep inner work, flushing out all those suppressed traumas, delusional beliefs, irrational fears, everything that I had stuffed down inside of me, pulling all those out into the surface, and resolving them. It's hard to describe. The best way I could describe it is metaphorically. It's that I started to experience all of the joy and wonder and beauty in life from my soul, instead of through the fears, delusions, and biases of my mind.
Sure.
It completely altered how I perceive reality itself. Going from a living hell of torment that in a life that needed to be trudged through.
Yeah.
To simply being and flowing with life is undescribable unless you've experienced it.
Oh yeah. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Is get everybody to experience that.
Right.
That's why you're here.
And
that's why you've decided to say yes to this entire mission.
And what
because this journey's beautiful. It's unreal.
It's undescribably beautiful. The thing I've learned in all this is really a mystery that they've known since the ancient times, and it's in a lot of ancient wisdoms and philosophies and religions, is that we don't experience the world as it is. We experience it as we are. So if I have a lot of chaos and anger and trauma inside of me, misery, I experience a chaotic, angry, miserable world.
Yeah.
It's a mirror reflection of my inner world. And once going through this process and having a radical change in attitudes, outlooks, and perspectives and finding inner peace and happiness within myself, the world becomes a much more happier, peaceful place because it never had anything to do with the outer world.
Oh boy, you're really getting into the nuts and you're getting into it here.
It's all of it's our inner world. But here's the irony of this. We all spend our lives trying to fix, manage, and control the outer world to find our inner peace and happiness and remove our suffering and misery.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works.
I know we kind of have to remove ourselves and strip ourselves, right?
So the flip side is that we have to...
pointed at the FocalFlip. I love it.
Because the flip side of it is the reality is we have to take all of that experience fixing, managing, and controlling and turn it inward.
Mm-hmm.
And fix, manage, control our thoughts, our feelings, our attitudes, our outlooks, our perspectives. And when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change.
Wow. And what kind of experience did you have with that?
Oh, my God. Was
it spiritual? What was
it?
It's
very spiritual. It's very
unbelievable.
Spiritual. It gets into the essence.
We never even said anything about spirituality until just now.
It gets into the essence of our soul.
Yeah. We talked about the spirituality, but yeah.
When I say soul, I'm not even talking anything religious. I'm talking about the deep inner essence of who we are.
Yeah, sure. That's I love it. And that's what we're gonna roll with that right into our next episode. Actually, we're gonna get ready to wrap this one up. John, you have spit some truth, spit some fire. I love it. I get to hear it in their rooms and stuff, and it's just awesome. Everybody has so many different perspectives, but you have really spent the time dissecting yourself.
I've dove deep.
Yeah. I mean, you have really dissected yourself. Your level of awareness is pretty cool. And I think that's where we kind of gelled so well together was, we eventually were so open-minded and become aware. And now we line up with all kinds of different people, without anybody imparting one thing on another. I'm excited for that. So for you and your journey, we're getting towards the end of our show, of this episode. You have any shout outs that you want to give, or anything that you want to say for along the way, or the credit that you can give for, you've done the work yourself, but clearly it takes with people along the way, it's just interesting. I'm sure your family's been very supportive.
I stand on the shoulder of giants, all the wisdom of the philosophers and the psychiatrists and all of the, the Greek wisdoms. They've known about all of this since the written language, and then the community within the 12-step groups yourself, it brings me such great joy to share what I've learned with you and watch you take it and run with it. And Thanks, in essence, change your life.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's it. It'll change your life. All this is, and everybody's going to learn through this process. You're literally becoming so open-minded. Your life will completely change, and you will be able to exist and love one another so freely that it just becomes second nature.
It takes the alcoholism and the addiction that once controlled us completely, body, mind, and soul. It makes it completely irrelevant.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I want everybody to understand with this whole program, this whole process. It's literally changing your mind, flipping everything inwards, getting mental clarity to the point to where you will start to learn and understand things more. And as you act on it, you will be able to come to your belief system, whether it was something you were conditioned with or not. That's how much mental clarity you will get through the process. That's why FocalFlip exists. That's why we were trying to do what we do, is to destigmatize this thing. Because look, is it scary? Sometimes, yeah. But we literally make it scary ourselves, y'all. We literally make it scary ourselves. It takes me every single time to say, I can do this myself. I can do this myself. And those in the past led me to go have a drink or led me go to do something else. Right. Now it's different.
Well, it's like Albert Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it.
Insanity. Yeah. And that's legit. I'm excited for this whole journey. John, you're cool with coming back on the next one too?
Absolutely.
Sweet. I'd love for you to end up being like a co-host with this thing, because we have so many people that are lining up with it. We can literally fill this panel, right, and take this thing on the road a little bit too. So excited to bring everybody along, destigmatize this thing. Getting treatment's totally fine. It is totally fine. Okay. There are great counselors. There are some not so great counselors. There are great therapists. There are some not so great therapists. There are, great doctors, not so great doctors, coaches, not so great coaches. It's everything. It's everywhere. Okay. What I can say is just be open-minded, learn, love, see the people that are authentically doing this, to get folks healthy. And that's what our goal and our mission is to do. Right, John?
Absolutely.
So thank you for helping me and jumping alongside this mission, just saying yes. It's going to be a blast. The next episode, I kind of want to jump into like that spirituality type thing, because people are really wanting to see what peace and stuff is like. Right. And it's hard to understand what peace is like outside of what you know as comfort through substances or alcohol or things like that. So stoked to bring it on there. You got any last words?
No, I think we've wrapped it up.
Bro, I love it. We're going to have so much fun. All right. That's it for the FocalFlip podcast. If you don't mind hitting like, hit subscribe, follow us. The content is coming. This is definitely the one that's coming right after the intro, y'all. Go to www.focalflip.com. Take a look at the website. Content's coming out here shortly. We'll have a blast. We'll be on Reels. We'll be on Facebook. We'll be YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Love y'all. Love you.
Love you.
Babe. Okay, you ready to wrap this thing up?
If you like FocalFlip's videos, my dad's videos, go to YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and like and subscribe to be updated.
I love it.